It was one of those quiet afternoons that seemed to stretch on forever. The house had settled into its usual hush, the kind of silence that speaks louder the longer it lingers. The wind outside rustled the dogwoods in our front yard, their leaves brushing softly against the windows like they were trying to get my attention. I had just finished folding the last load of laundry, warm cotton still cradled in my arms, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my husband. Jeremy's dropping off the proposal folder. Should be there around 2. You don't need to get up or anything. Typical. Short and efficient. That's always been Mark. Focused, tidy, a man of few words, unless it's about logistics or quarterly returns. Jeremy. I remembered him vaguely from a few holiday dinners and office parties. Late 30s, I think. Clean-shaven, always neatly dressed, with that quiet, respectful energy you rarely see in younger men these days. Mark's assistant for the last couple of years. He always stood just a few feet back, clipboard or tablet in hand, eyes scanning quietly like he was gathering more than anyone knew. I didn't expect anything out of the ordinary when the doorbell rang at precisely 1:58 p.m., right on schedule, of course. When I opened the door, there he was. "Hi, Mrs. Langley," he said, offering a small, polite smile. "Mark said I should bring this by." He held up a leather portfolio, his hand steady and his eyes, an unexpectedly deep gray, meeting mine with what felt like more than professional courtesy. "Oh, please, call me Diane," I said, stepping aside. "You might as well come in for a minute. I've got tea on if you'd like a cup." He hesitated, just for a heartbeat, before nodding. "I'd like that," he said. "Thanks." We settled into the sunroom, my favorite part of the house, all glass and light, with cushions that still held the scent of lavender from last summer. I poured 2 cups, offering him a plate of shortbread I'd made on a whim that morning, more out of habit than hunger. For a while, we talked. Small things. His drive over. The weather. The chaos at the office, which he described with a dry wit that made me laugh more than once. "I imagine Mark's buried in numbers, as usual," I said, stirring my tea. Jeremy smiled. "He's the most focused man I've ever worked for. You can set your watch by him." I nodded, looking out toward the yard where the light was starting to shift. I could feel him watching me, not in a way that made me uncomfortable, but as if he was trying to read something in the lines of my face. "Do you like working for him?" I asked, more curious than I realized. He paused, then answered carefully. "I respect him. But sometimes I wonder if he ever lets anyone in. Really in." That caught me off guard. I looked at him, surprised by his honesty. "Funny," I said softly. "I've been married to him for 31 years, and sometimes I wonder the same thing." There was a pause. Not awkward, just full. It was strange how the air shifted between us in that moment, as though something had cracked open, quietly, letting light into a corner neither of us expected to see that day. Jeremy set his cup down gently. "I hope I'm not overstepping," he said, voice lower now. I've always wondered about you." That made me blink. "Me?" He nodded, eyes steady. "You come to the office parties. You're always gracious. You listen more than you speak. And yet, you seem like someone who once lived a very different life. One that maybe you miss sometimes." I felt my breath catch. I didn't answer right away. Because how do you explain the quiet ache that sometimes creeps into your chest when the dishwasher hums, or the familiar weight of another solitary evening settles over the living room like an old blanket? Instead, I looked down at my hands. "You're very perceptive, Jeremy." "I try to be," he said gently. "But mostly I just pay attention. It's amazing what people tell you without saying a word. Time moved differently after that. The light through the windows had softened, shifting into golds and warm shadows. He didn't rush to leave. I didn't offer a reason for him to. We spoke of books, music, places we traveled, and then the harder things, the ones you don't usually share unless something in you feels safe enough. I used to paint, I told him, before the kids, before the business trips and the careful routines. Why'd you stop? He asked, not pushing, just gently curious. I looked at him and said the truth. I think I forgot how to be seen. I don't know exactly what changed in that moment, if it was the look on his face or the sudden warmth behind my eyes. But something cracked open in me. Not a romantic impulse, not lust, nothing so blunt or simple. It was more like recognition, of being witnessed, of being gently reminded that I was still a person with colors inside me, not just someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's role. Jeremy didn't touch me. Not then. He just sat with me, our knees almost brushing, and let the silence stretch comfortably. Eventually, he stood. I should go, he said, but his voice was soft, and something in his expression lingered. I nodded. My throat felt tight. Thank you for the tea. He hesitated at the door. Diane, would it be okay if I stopped by again, just to talk? I met his gaze, steady this time. Yes, I said. I think I'd like that. Jeremy came back the following week on a Wednesday afternoon. The day was overcast, the sky heavy with clouds that promised rain, but hadn't yet decided to let go. The house smelled faintly of chamomile from the tea I brewed as I waited. When the doorbell rang, my heart skipped, though not from nervousness exactly. More like a quiet curiosity, a gentle stirring I hadn't felt in a long time. I opened the door to find Jeremy standing there, portfolio tucked under his arm, but this time there was something softer in his eyes, a vulnerability I hadn't seen before. Hey, Diane, he said quietly. Thanks for having me again. I smiled and stepped aside. Of course. Come in. We settled once more in the sunroom, where the light was diffused through the gray skies, casting everything in a muted, intimate glow. I poured the tea and handed him a cup, noticing how his fingers wrapped around it like it was an anchor. The conversation started as easily as last time, about books he was reading, a jazz concert he'd recently attended, the slow arrival of spring in this part of the country. But beneath the surface of small talk, there was something else, an unspoken understanding, a fragile thread weaving between us. After a while, Jeremy's gaze drifted toward the window, watching the first drops of rain tap softly against the glass. Do you ever feel like you're just watching your life from the sidelines? He asked, voice low and tentative. I looked at him, surprised by the question. It wasn't the kind of thing most people said aloud. All the time, I admitted. Sometimes I think the years go by so fast, and I forget to step in and really live. He nodded slowly. Get that. I think that's why I admired you. You have this calm about you, but also a kind of sadness that's hard to explain. I felt a lump rise in my throat. I suppose everyone carries that in some form. There was a pause. Then Jeremy shifted in his seat and said, I've always wanted to ask you something, but I didn't know how. I waited, encouraging him without words. What's it like, being married to someone like Mark? I mean, really married, not just partners on paper. The question caught me off guard. Mark was dependable, steady, but also distant in ways that left large silences between us. I took a breath. It's complicated. We built a life together, and there's a lot of love, but sometimes it feels like we live parallel lives." Jeremy listened, his eyes never leaving mine. "Do you think he knows? About how you feel?" I shook my head. "No, we're polite, careful. Sometimes I think that's the only way to keep things from breaking." The room seemed smaller suddenly, the rain louder against the glass. Jeremy's hand brushed against mine briefly as he reached for his cup. It was a small, accidental touch, but it sent a warmth rushing through me. Neither of us spoke. Instead, we sat with the moment, two strangers and yet somehow connected by the quiet honesty between us. "Thank you for trusting me," he said softly. "It means more than you know." I smiled, feeling the weight in my chest ease just a little. "Me too." As the rain slowed, I realized that this unexpected visit had already changed something inside me. Not because of what happened, nothing dramatic, nothing reckless, but because, for once, I felt truly seen. Jeremy stood to leave, and before he went, he looked back with a smile that was both shy and sincere. "Until next time, Diane." I nodded, watching him go, already anticipating the quiet companionship his visits brought. That afternoon, alone again in the house, I realized that sometimes the most unexpected encounters can awaken parts of ourselves we thought were long gone. The days after Jeremy's visit hovered in my mind like an unfinished song, a melody I wanted to hum but couldn't quite find the words for. I went through the motions of daily life with the same practiced grace I always had, folding laundry, tending the garden, arranging fresh flowers on the kitchen table, but beneath that surface, something was quietly stirring. Mark was his usual self: early morning meetings, sharp phone calls, and an endless stream of emails demanding his attention. I admired his dedication, but lately I'd come to realize how much space that world took up, pushing everything else, including me, to the edges. Jeremy's visits became a lifeline in that quiet loneliness. I found myself looking forward to those afternoons with an unexpected eagerness. It wasn't just the company. It was the feeling of being truly known, the chance to be more than a shadow in someone else's story. One particular Wednesday, the sky was heavy with low-hanging clouds that threatened rain, but hadn't yet released their burden. The house smelled faintly of chamomile and old books, a scent that somehow felt like home. When the doorbell rang, I was ready. I smoothed the fabric of my sweater and opened the door to find Jeremy standing there, portfolio in hand, but with a softer expression than before. "Hey, Diane," he said quietly, almost hesitantly. "Thanks for inviting me back." His voice was gentle, layered with a warmth I hadn't noticed the first time. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. We moved into the sunroom, that sanctuary of light and quiet that had become our meeting place. The glass walls framed the world outside, muted by the overcast sky, lending an intimate feel to the space. I poured tea for us both, the steam curling in lazy spirals as we settled on the cushions. The silence between us was comfortable, a shared pause that felt like a breath. Jeremy broke it first. "I've been thinking about what you said last time, about being seen." He looked down at his cup, fingers tracing its rim. "It's a strange feeling, isn't it? To live your life surrounded by people who barely notice you." His eyes met mine, honest and searching. "Sometimes I feel invisible, too." I nodded slowly, my throat tight with unspoken emotion. "It's like wearing a mask, isn't it? You put on the face the world expects, and eventually you forget what you look like without it." I glanced toward the window, watching a single drop of rain slip down the glass. Years ago, I used to paint. Colors and light were my language. But the colors faded as the years went by. The roles took over: wife, mother, keeper of the household. Jeremy's gaze softened, and he said, "I've always admired how you carry yourself with such grace." But now I see there's so much more beneath that calm exterior. His voice was barely above a whisper. There's strength and sorrow, hope and regret, all tangled together. I felt tears prick my eyes, unbidden and warm. I've been afraid to let anyone see that, I confessed. Afraid it would make me vulnerable, or worse, unwanted. My fingers curled around my teacup as I searched for words. Sometimes I think I lost myself along the way. Jeremy reached out gently, brushing a tear from my cheek with the back of his hand. The simple touch sent a thrill through me, a reminder that I was still alive, still capable of feeling deeply. You deserve to be seen. All of you, he said softly, his voice filled with reverence. Not just the parts that fit the picture others have painted for you. The rain began to fall more steadily, a soft pattering against the glass walls surrounding us. We talked for hours, about dreams deferred, regrets left unspoken, and the quiet resilience that kept us moving forward. There was no pressure between us, no urgency, just the slow unfolding of two souls finding a safe place in each other's company. At one point, I shared a memory of the small studio I had converted in our old house, walls splattered with paint, canvases stacked in the corners. I'd sit there for hours, lost in color and shapes, I said, a wistful smile tugging at my lips. It was the last time I felt truly myself. Jeremy listened, captivated as though hearing a story he never expected to find. When the sun finally broke through the clouds, casting golden light over the wet earth outside, Jeremy stood to leave. The quiet between us was heavy with unspoken understanding, and something tender that neither dared to name yet. "Thank you, Diane," he said, his voice thick with feeling, "for trusting me with this part of you." I smiled, feeling an unexpected lightness in my chest. "Thank you for seeing me." As the door closed behind him, I sank onto the cushion, the warmth of the day and the echo of our connection wrapping around me like a soft shawl. For the first time in years, I dared to hope that the colors I'd lost might still find their way back, slowly, gently, and on my own terms. The days after Jeremy's visit felt different, not because something dramatic had changed overnight, but because inside me, a subtle shift was taking place. I woke up with a new kind of quiet hope resting just beneath the surface of my usual routine. The house was still the same familiar place, filled with memories and the steady rhythm of life with Mark, but now I saw it through a different lens, one that allowed me to notice the small moments of beauty I had long ignored. Mark, as usual, was absorbed in his work, and our conversations remained polite but distant. Yet, I no longer felt the same emptiness during those exchanges. I had discovered a secret well of strength and warmth in the spaces between. Jeremy's visits had become my anchor, a time when I could be wholly myself, without masks or expectations. It wasn't about romance or passion in the usual sense, but something deeper. A meeting of minds and hearts, a gentle acknowledgement of the loneliness we both carried and the healing we offered each other. One afternoon, as spring began to paint the garden with soft greens and shy blossoms, Jeremy arrived with a small sketchbook tucked under his arm. "I've been working on something," he said, a little shyly. "Would you like to see?" We settled in the sunroom, the late afternoon light casting a warm glow over the pages as he carefully turned them. His drawings were delicate and expressive. Faces, places, moments captured with a tenderness that took my breath away. "I want to capture the things people don't usually notice," he explained. "The quiet beauty of everyday life." I was moved, not just by the art, but by the vulnerability it revealed. "You have a gift," I told him softly. "Thank you for sharing this with me." He smiled, eyes shining with gratitude and something unspoken, a promise perhaps. As the days grew longer, our conversations deepened. We talked about dreams deferred and found again, about the fears that kept us from living fully and the small acts of courage that make all the difference. Jeremy's presence was a balm for my soul, not a replacement for the life I'd built with Mark, but a gentle reminder that I was still whole and capable of growth. One evening, after he left, I stood by the window watching the sunset blaze in fiery oranges and pinks. I thought about how much I had changed in just a few weeks, how the unexpected arrival of Jeremy's kindness had opened a door I thought was locked forever. I felt grateful, not just for him, but for myself, for the courage to embrace the unknown, to seek connection even when it felt risky. In the quiet of that moment, I made a promise to myself to live more openly, to reclaim the colors I had buried, and to nurture the parts of me that had been waiting patiently in the shadows. Life, I realized, is full of surprises, some gentle, some profound, and sometimes the most unexpected visits bring us exactly what we need.